How's it going, guys? Cody, guys, back again, dropping yet another video. Right, guys, I've had a couple of days off, as you've probably clocked. It was my 35th birthday on Saturday, so I didn't do anything for it and stuff. I ended up meeting up with my ma and then met my sister and her son in Manchester city centre. Just had a mosey on about and stuff like that, and then that was it. I don't really celebrate birthdays, don't celebrate Christmas, spending Christmas on my own, which is the way that I like it. Yeah, just had a bit of downtime then on Tuesday, so yesterday I spoke at a secondary school with a doctor of criminology. The students at this school in Stockport, there was about 70 students, so I think 2 or 3 classes came together, or about 2 classes and some extra students. Some kids are in the exclusion, the naughty kids, but we're not allowed to say that, are we? They came in, we was in this like lecture theatre assembly thing. The doctor of criminology did like a PowerPoint presentation which seemed to go down well with the students, and they was doing a GCSE about prison. So I was there as obviously as an ex-con, and we fielded questions and stuff from the students, spoke about criminality, prison, the domino effect, and I was trying to plant a seed in the minds of the children that, like, you go down that route, you're going to end up being here. And there's a saying that I think rings true very much so, and that is that a wise man learns from other people's mistakes, a fool learns from his own. And in that situation, I was the fool. I've had to learn from my own criminality and stuff, and through my own mistakes. Anyway, guys, that was yesterday. I got a card, which was a really nice touch. I'll put the picture of the card actually at the start so you can have a nosy. Anyway, guys, moving on from that, story on the BBC News website. It's about PAVA spray that's going to be rolled out in the next few weeks and stuff. It's coming in on January the 1st, I believe, 2019. It's going to cause havoc, and for me, it's going to see a rise in violence again. And other people are going to get caught in the crossfire, and it's going to cause all sorts of problems. Speaking to a couple of prisoners that are still serving time, they've got a bet amongst themselves to see who's the first person that can get hold of this PAVA spray in their possession. And the kit is going up all the time. So the headline reads, Halt prison pepper spray plan, ministers urged. Story reads, ministers are being urged to reverse plans to issue prison officers with a synthetic pepper spray known as PAVA following a trial. From next year, canisters will be used to staff in publicly run prisons for men in a bid to reduce violence. The Prison Reform Trust says its own analysis of the 6-month trial in 4 prisons showed the pepper spray was often used unsafely and inappropriately. Ministers have said trials of the pepper spray were successful. The official report gives details of 50 cases where the chemical incapacitant was deployed. The trials took place in 4 prisons, Hull, Preston, Risley, Wealdstone, in 2017 and 2018. Officers were trained and issued with PAVA, which is intended to be used as a last resort as a personal protection tool to prevent harm to selves or others. In guidance, they were told to deploy it only when the other techniques were not possible, had already failed, or were considered unsafe or insufficient. In a letter to the PRT, the Prison Reform Trust, in November, Prison Minister Rory Stewart says the spray is intended for use in exceptional circumstances where a member of staff is faced with serious violence or the perceived threat of serious violence. However, the campaign group says its analysis carried out by an experienced former prison governor shows that in almost 2/3 of the incidents, officers might have contravened the guidelines. In fact, the use of PAVA spray very rapidly became a routine part of how routine incidents were dealt with, says the PRT. Incidents of inappropriate use in the official report include use against a prisoner who was self-harming. An inmate with mental health problems sprayed 3 times in 10 minutes, including point-blank range through a flap in his cell door. An officer spraying the wrong prisoner and a colleague attempting to intervene in a fight. The wrong prisoner, guys. Use of spray on a prisoner who had jumped onto the safety net in between the floors. Overall, the analysis suggests that of the 50 incidents, almost a quarter involved unsafe use, for example, in confined spaces, at height, at point-blank range, or hitting the wrong prisoner or prison officer. Almost a quarter could have been resolved by other means, so PAVA was not deployed as a last resort. A third involved use without appropriate justification, for example, to enforce orders rather than to prevent serious harm. The PRT warns that the use of PAVA risks undermining trusts between prisoners and prison officers and could lead to an escalation in violence as prisoners arm themselves against a perceived threat. At the very least, the ministers should call a moratorium on the Halt, that's what the word means in a nutshell. The national rollout until an adequate process of consultation has taken place, the group urges. Rebecca Hilsenrath, chief executive of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, agreed there was no sound evidence to support the rollout. We agree that it is the height of importance that prison officers are able to protect themselves and others, but such protections must not be at the expense of the basic rights of prisoners, she said. Everyone has the right to live without fear of inhumane treatment. A spokesperson for the prison service said, there was no evidence to suggest PAVA spray was used unlawfully during the pilot, and it'd be wrong to imply that the case of misuse were ignored. The spokesman said only officers who had completed specialist training were allowed to carry the spray, adding the aim was not to reduce violence, but to reduce the harm that can occur during violence. We've taken on board lessons learned during the PAVA pilot and are putting in place clear rules for its deployment, so it's not only used when serious violence occurs or is threatened. Now, it's not good, guys, right? Now, it was used in an incident at height. An incident at height is where a prisoner gets onto the bars or gets onto the netting, right? For those that don't know, between certain landings, there is netting, metal netting. Now, I've seen the netting in strange ways. At Forest Bank, there isn't netting. Between your twos and your ones, so your first landing and your ground floor, there is no netting. There was actually a VP who, because there's so many in the system, there's an overspill into general population. He threw himself from the twos onto the ones head first and stuff. So yeah, but like I say, they're using it in incidents at height. They became over-reliant on it. It's a bad precedent to set, in my opinion, guys. Now, the training for prison officers in the UK is, I think it's 10 weeks, and they spent a full 1 week on control and restraint training. Now, control and restraint training works, right? And then they become reliant on the panic button. Then they get in PAVA spray. Apparently, according to an interview that I did with the Prison Officers Association National Chair, a scumbag by the name of Mark First, who works at Walton Prison or HMP Liverpool, he said that prison officers are now being armed with extendable police batons, koshes, similar to what the police use. In 2019, PAVA sprays coming in, which again was piloted in 4 prisons: Wealdstone, Hull, Preston and Risley. They became over-reliant on it, guys, the officers, and if it's used disappropriately and when it's not needed, it's going to cause friction and cause problems, and other prison officers can get caught in the blast. They even sprayed the wrong prisoner, guys. How does that work? So for me, it's a massive no-no. It shouldn't be rolled out. Arming prison officers is simply not the answer. Koshes, rigid bar handcuffs are coming in. PAVA sprays coming in. Control and restraint training. Panic buttons on the radio. Right, they've got they're backed up by security and the Mufti squads. Right, you've got the nationals as well. Brutalising prisoners is by arming prison officers who are then disproportionately using it. They've got guidelines. They're not using it to them guidelines. They're actually using it when they want to use it. A prisoner was self-harming. They sprayed him. Hold on, guys. I'm going to have to sneeze. Bless me. Bless me. So yeah. So it's just crazy, guys. It's really, I really don't buy into this plan. And imagine if a prison officer, if a prisoner, sorry, jumps on the bars and there's no netting and they spray him from a distance, right? When you get sprayed, I've been sprayed, right? Now, your instincts to go for your eyes swell up and your nose starts to run and your eyes are running, right? Your instinct, if you're holding onto the bars and you get sprayed from a distance, right? Your instinct's going to go from the bars to your eyes. What's going to happen if there's no netting? You're going to fall head first. It could potentially cause serious risk to that prisoner or even death. If you fall head first, chances are you're going to die. It's a really, really bad initiative. It's proven through the statistics and stuff that the PAVA spray rollout hasn't actually quelled violence at all within prisons. I did an interview with the Prison Officers Association National Chair, which is further down my timeline on BBC Radio Wales. And he's telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about and that PAVA spray is working. Well, the proof is actually it's not worked. And it's still being rolled out. For me, if something works, then you can justify rolling it out. It hasn't been proved to work at all, and they're still rolling it out. The reality is that when prison officers walked out on strike at violence, record levels of violence, which they've attributed to, by the way, by lobbying for the smoking ban which came in, knowing that prodding sleeping prisoners by taking the tobacco away, pushing tobacco into contraband, which then makes the price goes up, that incurs debt. Where you've got debt, you've got fear, intimidation, bullying and violence. They lobbied for that, guys, the Prison Officers Association. So they've already increased violence themselves. They're understaffed, and then they walk out. When they don't get what they want, they spit the dummy out, and then they walk out from the position of the job. They walk off the landings, but then it's banned industrial action, so they're ordered back onto the landings. And then they sat down with the prison governor, Rory Stewart, and said, we want this, 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 and this. They got a pay rise. They're getting rigid bar handcuffs. They're getting PAVA spray. And I think they've recruited, the Ministry of Justice have recruited like 3,500 officers, but still they've lost over 7,000 officers. And for the 7,000 experienced officers they've lost, they've recruited inexperienced, wet behind the ears prison officers who get 10 weeks training. And whatever training you do during that 10 weeks doesn't fully prepare them for life on the wing. And then what happens? They get a kick in and then they quit the job because the job's been sold to them a certain way, and that's not the reality of the job. Because they're putting out cell fires, they're doing act books, they're unlocking, they're doing roll counts, you know what I mean? They're putting out fires, they're having to carry out first aid on prisoners who have strung up or hung themselves. The list goes on, man. The social workers, they do a lot of stuff, man. And then on top of that, you've got a small corrupt number that are bringing in contraband. Again, undermines the prison rules. And that fuels violence within prison, because where you've got contraband, you've got debt. Where you've got debt, you've got fear, intimidation, bullying and violence. Arming prison officers is not the answer. It's as simple as that. Prisoners have got it hard enough as it is, and then you want to give PAVA spray to prison officers who are just straight away. And it's not good, then it's going to see an increase in violence. If you spray someone at heights that's on the bars and they fall head first, then obviously that is going to see alarm bells. And I think it's going to further fraction the prison officer-prisoner relationship. It depends what prison you're in, guys. Been in HMP, you've got to keep the screws at an arm's length there, because, well, they keep you at an arm's length as well, because they swap the person like for a set of keys and epaulets and stuff. At private prisons like Sodexo, Ram Forest Bank, where I was, the officers were a lot more approachable, and you got a decent, the officers there, I've got to be straight with you, the decent officers, you know. But again, you're going to have officers that are going to go straight for the belt buckle to spray you with pepper spray, PAVA spray, when it's not needed. And it can actually increase violence rather than decrease it. Momentarily, it might quell the violence for a moment, but then the animosity is still going to be there, isn't it, and stuff, and it's going to see an increase. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Anyway, I'm waffling on and on and on. Link in the description below, like I always do. I'm back. Like, comment, subscribe. Cody out.